Hello again, KR King here of D&D Homebrew. I'm at Gen Con. I'm here with Daniel Norton of Bandit's Keep. We're on the third day, that's the fourth day of the convention here, Sunday.
Third day for
yes, that's right. I got here Friday. And yes. And we just wanted to, share some thoughts, some things that we saw when we were here at Gen Con. Talk generally. How did you feel about this time, Daniel, in terms of this convention? You've been to a bunch. I haven't been to any, as I told my viewers, in many years. Your impressions here of this Gen Con?
I like Gen Con. I think Gen Con is, I was actually talking to my friends before we went that have been to a bunch of different conventions, and Gen Con is like an experience. You go to some cons, like let's say Gary Con, to play games. Like it's small, there's lots of really great games. Gen Con, there's all different types of things. Board games, miniature games, there's shows, there's walks, there's exercise classes, there's just people cosplaying. It's just a much different experience. So if you want to be like geek immersed, Gen Con is the place.
Well, and I was struck by how many people are here. You walked through, yesterday I was walking through the exhibit hall. It's just incredible, the number of people, the number of different games, the number of aspects of this whole gaming world. Thinking about the days back when there was a lot of RPG, there were war games and things like that, but you didn't, and certainly the cosplay people that are everywhere, that's part of their enjoyment. It is just kind of overwhelming to see this level.
I'm waving at KR's fans as they go by.
Yeah, they're going by. And again, I was lucky enough, Daniel invited me to his luxury hotel right across from the convention. I'm off miles away, but...
Gen Con advice. Unlike Dungeon Craft that does a video before Gen Con to give you advice, I'll give it to you after.
Stay right across.
Right, stay in the one of the Marriotts. Now, there's 17 Marriotts here, and they're all called Marriott, so it's kind of hard to figure out where you are, but once you figure it out, you're there.
Well, with me, you just head 5 miles from the arena, and there you have your place.
Yeah, Airbnbs are great, a good way to do it as well, especially the very first time I ever came. A whole bunch of us got a house, it was maybe a 20-minute drive away. There was 8 of us. We all had our own rooms. We went shopping. We came in on a Tuesday or Wednesday. We bought food. And every morning we'd have eggs and talk about our games. Or, for the vegans, they had...
Yeah, and I do have a nice Airbnb where it's a little kitchen and whatnot. It's really great. And it's only 8 minutes to drive. It's really not that bad.
8.
I know, 8 minutes.
He's very precise.
Yes, well, because, of course, with the phones now...
That's because he's a 3.5 player at heart. It's exactly 8 minutes. It's not...
Okay, you ran a couple of games, your own games. How was that? What was that experience like running here at Gen Con? Yeah. And tell us what you ran.
So I love running games at cons. You meet a lot of different people. It's a huge challenge because when you sit down at a home game, if you spend 3 hours goofing off with your friends and they walk away and nothing happened, that's cool. You hung out with your friends. But at a con, people are here to play. So you really have to think about the games. There are a different way of running them. But I ran original Dungeons & Dragons, just 3 brown books, none of this new modern Greyhawk stuff. And then I ran it with chainmail, and we had a full miniatures battle at the end for the second half of it. Awesome players. They won every time. These players. And then I ran Top Secret from 1980. It was a Gen Con tournament module in 81. So I ran that, and I only had 2 players for that one because some people couldn't make it. But they did a great job. They went in, they parachuted onto the boat, and they got the terrorists, and everything was fine in the 80s. That's why we're here now. If they didn't succeed in this module, it would have been like one of those time warp things, and everything would have changed, and
Well, it's interesting because I didn't run any modules, but I ran in the Dungeon Crawl Classic.
Played.
Which ran in or played, and I found it to be... there wasn't enough kind of battles and stuff in this 4-hour period for me to get a great sense of it, but I got enough. I'd read the rules. I was interested in this because... OSR guy here. I wanted to try this, and I've read some reviews. It always gets really positive reviews on different YouTube channels.
DCC is really fun.
Yeah, and I could see the magic system, and I like the warrior thing where you do these sort of heroic deeds and stuff. And I could see that it moves along quickly. You're not bogged down.
Yeah.
Then I ran some board games here. Well, we did the arena game.
Well, Dungeon Crawl Classics mechanizes a lot of the things that I think old school people do by nature. When I'm playing a game and somebody's a fighter and they say, I want to swing across a chandelier and knock them on the ground, then I might just make up something on the spot as a dungeon master or a referee. In Dungeon Crawl Classics, there's a mighty deed of arms, and you roll a certain die, and depending on what level you are, so if you like a more mechanical thing or you're not trying to incorporate that into your game, it's a really good system.
I did have an instance where they had the creature with all the mouths. it's not a
Gibbering mountain?
Well, I asked the guy that, and he said no, it's something different. So I was
That's
like,
because
okay.
they can't use that because, in fact, we're going to get flagged on by Wizards of the Coast now.
So right, so I will. So it had one of the players in
Like a
its
shadow?
giant tongue on him, grappled. So I said, I'm going to run in with my warrior, and I'm going to leap across, and as I strike, I will strike at the tongue itself. I made the 1d5 roll, and or was it 1d5? I made the roll on it, so not only did I get the extra damage, but I sliced off the tongue very dramatically. The guy then tumbled away and escaped.
Right.
So this is the idea about Dungeon Crawl Classics: is the cinematic actions are actually integrated in the system, which I like.
Yeah.
And of course, in your 5e game, if you want, you can incorporate that as well. It's just this is actually not just you doing it, but it's actually mechanized into the system. So.
Yeah, if you could basically take the optional rule in the Dungeon Master's Guide in 5th edition that has the proficiency dice instead of the proficiency bonus, and then incorporate it, because that's how you do it. Because basically the Mighty Deed of Arms is like a high roll on your... Do you use that in your games? The Mighty...
I have not. I
proficiency
tend to
dice,
avoid
check
the
it out. It's
option,
in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
All right, and the other thing that I found fascinating...
I had
for
to
my
call
viewers-
out some stuff from the Dungeon Master's Guide in 5e since he totally threw shade and said I was an OSR.
Okay, that's good. And of course, I was going to say, because I always get people, and I'm not going to mention him by name because he gets mad, I'm always mentioning him, who throws shade at the DMG as the worst Dungeon Master's Guide of all of them. And those who watch my channel know who I'm talking about. And I'm always trying to defend it, even as I'm going, this is not the greatest Dungeon Master Guide ever created. But then there's theories as to why that is. We can go to that some other time.
I'll be honest, when I first got the Dungeon Master's Guide, so when I first got into 5e, I'm going to, not side story, this is all the stuff gets cut on my video, I'm going to put it in Kara's video.
Yes.
No, when I first got into 5e, the Player's Handbook was out of stock. So I just got the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I had a character I could sheet, and I'd played D&D back in the day, so I just kind of made a character looking at the sheet. But then I started reading the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I kind of fell asleep after the 5th page, because I didn't like the way it was written. It didn't seem interesting to me. But then I realized later, flipping through it, there is some good stuff in the back. There's definitely charts for when people talk about add minions to your game. There's already stuff in the Dungeon Master's Guide for doing mass combats with 50 kobolds and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's there. People say it's not there, so they homebrew it, and then you buy this extra homebrew rule from somebody, and it's already in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
You're right. The thing, I've already gone into that. I'm not going to talk about the DMG. Let's get back to...
Oh, yeah, we're at Gen
The
Con.
other thing that I found, and I'm going to have some videos on this, is all sorts of worlds that people have created. They're Kickstarter things, worlds or campaign settings for 5e, and I found that really interesting. Palladium was one. There's another one. I'll put links to these, and I'll have a video on these coming up here shortly, because I interviewed some of these people at Gen Con, talked about what's motivating people to create these worlds. And I think that's, of course, my channel is about homebrewing, but it is a complicated process. When you have one of these created worlds that's been play tested, and the one that person I talked, they ran for this 15 years. They ran this world. They came up with a Kickstarter. They created this. It has all the pantheon and the continent and all the different areas based on them running this for 15 years. So I found this very interesting, and I'm going to have a link to that. And this is something that has come up here. I don't remember this as much, and this is the whole Kickstarter revolution, because I'm so far in the back at coming to these conventions. These Kickstarters and whatnot allow people to create these games, and they're professionally printed and bound and all that, and the production values are really good. Is that something, have you looked at all, or I guess you're OSR, so you're not in 5e anymore, but well, that's what his channel is about. But let me ask you this other question. That was something that I really found interesting. What was
I have
one
two
thing?
things on Drive-Thru RPG, and one of them is a module for 5e that I wrote.
Oh, that you wrote. Well, there you go. See? Okay, we looked that
I
up.
took a class. It was actually a good class.
Okay. Anything, that was the thing that kind of struck me at the convention, was one thing that you could say that you were really like, wow, look at this convention. Any game, any experience, whatever? I know.
No, there was a lot of good stuff here. When I came here, my shift, and we've talked about this a little before, I never played miniatures games or board games or anything. I was just an RPG guy, then a nothing person. I didn't play any games for a long time, and then back to RPGs. I found these skirmish miniature games to be super interesting, and that's what I looked at. And we played that game together, that Arena Rex. And you were like, honestly, all these miniature games are kind of the same, just like all the board games are kind of the same. Sorry, board game people throwing shit. All RPGs are kind of the same. A lot of it's just the surface level stuff, and this one had beautiful miniatures, and the setup was really good for it. So it was really cool just to see how you can play these little games, and you could see yourself role playing with it. Like when I look at these games, I can see how oh, I get how they were playing chainmail and like went and made D&D. You're like, I see how they did it. You had your guy, and you're like, oh, my guy hit you in the face. I'm sure most people were just like, roll dice, kill you, but other people were like, oh, this is my character, and he survived so many times. And that's where RPGs come from. And I think that if we keep that as a basis, then we can create awesome stuff, because that's really it. You're just playing your character.
But this is a really interesting point because the role-playing game, as if you ascribe to Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson and his gang coming up with this, they played miniatures, and they just started throwing in fantastical things. A dwarf. They were also big fantasy literature guys, as the famous Appendix N or whatever showed. So they were just throwing this stuff in, and then the idea of creating this storyline and this thing came out of that miniature. That's what they were really after. They were down in a basement, terrain, miniatures, figures. And so when I started playing, that was just the game. The game was still just miniature. I mean, we would talk about where we were going, but once a battle occurred, you had your mat out, or some people had the actual terraform kind of things, and we would play with those and maneuver those, and that was a big part of it. Now, in today's game a lot, you don't have people that have the patience for that or the desire to sit there and analyze how far things away. They had squares and they had inches. Everything was inches because it was based on, we had little rulers and things.
Which, by the way, not to interrupt you, I find, this is now me coming into this, when I first started playing some of these miniature things, I was using like hex maps like you'd use for 5e normally, and I was like, Then I just started playing on the table with a ruler. It changes the entire feel of it. You get more immersed. Depending on how you do it, you might say you can't pre-measure. So you're looking at the table and you're like, am I close enough to shoot that goblin? Or if I move an extra inch, will that goblin be able to shoot me on their turn? And you have to kind of visualize that, and I feel like that actually makes you more immersed in it because you're thinking like the character would be. Do I want to get close to this goblin or not? Whereas when you look at the squares and you're like, oh, you know what? Let me get my little, thing. Let me get the little circles that I put down for the spells. To me, that takes a lot of it out of it, and I find that becomes more board gamey. I air quote a lot.
Okay.
Right. Whereas miniature gaming, as far as I see it from an outside perspective, is different. It's a lot more. You're there. You're looking at. You're more immersed.
No.
So when people play 5e, let's say they play on Fantasy Grounds like you do, I find that to be more board gamey than miniature gaming, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense because now if you watch people playing, I've sat there and watched these guys playing Kasserine, this World War II desert warfare, Rommel versus the British Army, and that they're all sitting there with their rulers and they are measuring.
Well, yeah,
now because they're immersed in that world. But when those guys were firing those tanks, they had little measuring things in their thing, but they sometimes that would vary. It wasn't, and certainly if you go back into medieval or ancient times, it was experience, and you could justify that rulers by saying my archers would know how far things were from years and years of practice. But it does change things because you will measure something and go, nah, I think I'll go over here. Well, meanwhile, in the fog of the battle, you would not have time to sit there and analyze every. So, but of course, some people just take this as, well, that's the game. I don't want to be making mistakes or whatever.
And I wonder too. It depends on the game system or the players, right? Because, for instance, in chainmail, you're not supposed to pre-measure. It specifically says you can't because things like catapults, there's all these weird little. Did you play it with all the weird?
No,
there's these dowels that you paint and you lay them down and you're like, well, you got to roll this and then you put the dowel down on top of the guy's head and turn it this way.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are in 1974 right now.
And it sounds like on the surface before you get into it, it's like that's just weird. But then as you start to play it, you're like, this is actually kind of fun. Like the way I did the simplified method I had the wizard, which I was fighting against. I was the bad guys, of course, because I'm the GM. And I was like, well, the wizard throws 2 6-sided dice. If they match, I hit you dead on. If they miss, then it goes off to either side, depending on the die. And once I nailed it, blew out a whole group of their soldiers. They're like, oh. And then the next time, the giant threw short and killed one of his own, 50 of his own men. And they were like, yeah. And I think that adds to it. If you can just go, well, no, I hit exactly right there. It's cool, but it doesn't add that factor of can I do it?
I would still say that in terms of playing these miniatures for a long time and playing on the board and playing on we always played on squares, not hexes. Being able to know how far, moving those things up, that's an experience that is part of the miniatures experience. But if you decide to modify it, if you say, well, how close, you think you can get there, but not, or something like that. But sometimes people will complain. If you were just saying can't measure, do you think you can get there? And then what do? Do you then measure to see if they can get there?
Yeah.
And then, okay, right.
Especially for charges, right? Because a charge is incredibly powerful, but you can't charge twice in a row. So your charge inches is 12 inches. You're looking at that map and you're like, can I charge those goblins? I'm going to do it. You put your ruler out, they're 13 inches away. You don't make it. Now you're exhausted. They move forward 1 inch. You're screwed, right? So you have to make a call. Do I want to try to do this? And that becomes part of the risk of the game. It adds that extra level. Forget about rolling dice. Now it's the strategy level.
But if it's interesting we're getting this argument here because
welcome to the miniatures.
Yes, because what about if you in that sense you need a mat or you need something laid out where without hexes some ground, even if it's a tabletop.
Yeah.
And so, but part of you is going to be looking at that tabletop and going, is this? I know. Once you've done it once or twice, you're going to know those distances.
And that's player skill.
That's the years and years.
And you learn how to cheat.
I have played
like
on this
you know
table.
how long your hand is, and you like lean it down on the table. Well,
so for the big tournament, you're gonna say, oh no, we're not using that table. We're using this table.
Let me tell you something. When I did the miniatures, so I went on to the evil Amazon, and I bought for $3 a bag of tape measures. So when I'm like, all right, we're going to play miniatures, I threw a tape measure to each of the players. They were like, oh my God. It's just a different experience.
No, I played this many
and I never
times.
played, so for me it's something new, right? So it's like it's what's old is new, I guess.
Yeah, and I knew there was one set of Wargamer guys that had these elaborate tables, huge tables, and they had terrain, and they had villages and this kind of thing. And it was a totally different game. We tended to use that for our big set battles, and we would always... You'd have the big bad villain, and he would have his troops, and then the final confrontations tended to be these giant epic scale miniature battles, which was again, this is a totally different era. But because it was so, and because when I started playing, I was in Detroit, Michigan, and someone from Geneva, Lake Geneva, that had played there, this guy, he went to Wayne State, and he brought it to Wayne State, and then there was a guy that was a son of a professor who moved to my town. So I was 3 generations away from TSR. That's why it was there in the early 70s. So it was all miniature stuff, right? That's
you know how you have the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yes, exactly.
6 degrees of KRT.
Of Gary Gygax, who then we saw at these conventions, and that was a whole other thing. I wouldn't go into the Gary Gygax.
Join the Patreon to find out what he really thinks about Gary Gygax.
I'll give you that. So what other things you want to talk about here with this?
Well, I think we can tie into the second. I'm going to roll back into that thing that we were saying because this ties it. I was going in a full circle. And then
okay. He
cut it. He cut it right when it was full circle.
Okay,
he's such a good interviewer that he's going from question to question. It's a free-form conversation.
Yes.
So anyways, the reason why this all is relevant is because this is all at Gen Con, right? You've got this like rooms full of these miniature war games that are both just skirmish war games. Some are RPGs people are playing, some are board games. Some people are playing Theater of the Mind RPGs in rooms like we are. People are playing card games. I played Dominion, which is like a card building game. All this is happening at the same time in one place. And you realize that there is so much more to this hobby than just sitting around playing D&D or whatever game you play. There's so much more to this, and you can experiment and try different things and see. You might learn something from one game and then bring it into your table that you didn't think would be like, you're like, no, I'm using the player's handbook or whatever you play, and then all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I saw this miniatures game or this board game. A classic old school example, OD&D tells you to play outdoor survival for mapping. I did that with my home group. They were just like, what is you're tricking us into playing a board game? That's what one of my players said. I'm like, yes, I am. We played it for 2 sessions. They played outdoor survival on the thing. They loved it. They thought it was so like, this is such a refreshing change to try something different. So I think a con like this can allow you to do that. My advice would be, if you play, let's say 5th edition D&D, don't come to Gen Con and fill your schedule with 5e.
Totally.
Try other things. This is the chance to do it. Play in other games. Run things. See how other people play. I think that it will help make you a better player and a better referee.
So, and for me, to add on to that, this is the thing that I really enjoyed, was that you have at all these tables, all these people, they'll have demo games where you can sit down with a person that knows the game. They work for the company. They quickly, a lot of times it's sort of a demo version. They might not have all the rules. They might have, something they've adapted.
Yeah,
but to be able to
finish.
Okay, so this gives you an opportunity to play these games without having to, first of all, just buy them on the internet or have to go somewhere where your friend has it. And you can just go from booth to booth. I mean, this to me, I just walked around and I saw something that was interesting. The guy, and they say, do you want to play a game? And then it's like 20 minutes, 30. They usually set it up so it's not some 4-hour civilization game. And you get a sense of what the game is, and you get it from an expert. And you're doing it with other people who are going through the same experience. So what he's talking about, too, is, because I was also going to say, the diversity at this convention. So when I was going to conventions in my day, everybody kind of looked like me or Daniel.
Old
or
guys.
Old guys. Yeah, we were pre-old. But we all, now there's this incredible diversity of people in this hobby, which is what makes it, which is why it's thriving, which is
awesome.
why it's growing. It's great. And when you see that and you realize, oh, all sorts of people are playing this game. It's because I was from an era when you didn't say to people you played D&D because they're like, oh, nerdling, whatever it was. It just became kind of a thing. It wasn't the satanic panic or any of that stuff. It just was not a cool thing to do. Once everybody gets into it, it just becomes something that everybody takes as their own. And you really get that sense of how diverse and how different there are people in this hobby. And that's what I think is really great. And of course, we're all coming together for a mutual thing.
Yeah, I
play
agree with
games.
that. 100%. You're meeting people from all over the country, all over the world, of different backgrounds, different types of people, different beliefs, and different ways of living. And you really can see that this game works for everybody, and people play it differently, and that you can learn from people. Yeah, I mean, I'm from New York City, so I'm around a lot of different people all the time, but it's good to see this here. It really is. Yeah.
All
of
right.
course, I was so much of a geek that I didn't realize that I wasn't cool.
Oh,
so
see,
I
there
told
you
people
go.
that I played D&D when I was a kid. But,
So I did get that experience where I was from, but
I was going to say that guy cheated
which guy cheated?
in the Arena at Rex game. Because there was a
Oh.
lion that you could activate in
Yeah.
order to kill like other people, and then he did that on our guys, and then he didn't tell us that we could do it. So this lion's killing us, and then finally I'm like, well, could we control the lion? Oh, sure, you just spend one of your points.
Yeah.
Look
Well,
at
then he said, well, I'll show you a strategy of how to get away, and he ran towards
the lion.
So it was a total screw job.
Yeah.
You finally had a screw job,
Screw job.
at the convention.
Total screw job. No, but the game was amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. And shoot, and then I was thinking of something else, but
Well, you know what? This is what, just while you're thinking. So I signed up for three games, I think, and I played maybe 7 games. 4 of them were like in booths, and I'd say those were almost equal to the games I played because I didn't play RPG games. Because you just get to learn it, they're quick. So I recommend that if you come to Gen Con, give yourself time to walk around that vendor hall. You could probably sign up for no games and show up, which is basically what you did, right? Show up here, walk around, enjoy stuff, and then see what's available and jump in a game. There's so much here.
right, because I wanted to get the experience having not been to one for a long time, and so I just came, and then as I got here and looked around, there was still plenty of games available. In fact, I'm supposed to be playing Dungeon. I may have missed the Dungeon time, but
I'll play Dungeon. I'll run Dungeon for you.
yeah, okay. So that's what I didn't need to come here and have all your schedule slotted out, because the other thing is you may find I just like doing these demo games. I don't need to be in some 4-hour slot, especially if you're going to go for one day or maybe 2. You come and just experience this and get into this.
Unless you see on the schedule a game by K.R. King.
Yes.
Or
Then
me, then you want to sign
Daniel
up for those
Norton.
games.
But his fans, I mean, he's being recognized on the floor and whatnot. But
No,
that's
that guy
all-
didn't. Were you there when that happened?
Yeah, you told
I'm
me.
walking on the floor, and this guy's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hey," and he's like, "You work at such and such game store," and I'm like, "No, I don't. Nice to meet you, though."
It's better than mine. Your channel sucks. No,
Right.
nobody said that. Nobody knows.
Get out of here, old man.
All right. Well, anyway, guys, this is our report from Gen Con. A really great experience for me. We're going to go back. It's still on. I'm going to go back and possibly play something, go around. I'm going to make some purchases. That's another thing about buying, games that you see or demo. That's why they do it, to get you to buy it. So I'm excited. I think I'm going to be going to Gary Con if I can still get in next year. We'll see. But so thank you, Daniel Norton, for being here from Bandit's Keep. And again, as always, folks, keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.